Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. Every time we get together with her, we get insight on what's trending right now. There's a lot going on in terms of tariffs, in terms of birthrights, and we're going to dig into that through the eyes of an attorney. What's law got to do with it? We'll find out. She is a litigator within construction, real estate, based in New York City, but she's got her finger on the pulse of everything. She's a partner with Greenspoon, Marder, LLP, and she's back with us. Carol Sigmond joins us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Steve. How are you?
How do you have time to even do this? Because you're like an info junkie. You're watching everything, keeping tabs on everything, the legal aspect, the background, all of that. I don't even know how do you find time?
I have a very dull social life.
All right. That's your social life. And that's all right. That's all good. So the tariff situation, of course, this was enacted, a month and change, 2 months ago, whatever it might be. Now, situation involving China. And the last I looked, this has been paused. Am I right in using that word?
Yeah, paused is a good word. Yeah, paused is a good word. So first of all, the tariffs have been very disruptive. The supply chains and the transport of goods, this is all takes time and money and effort to organize. And when the tariffs hit and small business kind of started to pull back, then the shippers pulled back and, mothballed some transport ships, and manufacturers stopped manufacturing goods. So in 90 days in the context of trade is not enough time. If you wanted to affect the flow of goods worldwide with some kind of change in the tariff policy, it would have to be a very long-term kind of change. Otherwise, the disruption will continue. Small business is going to continue to do what it's doing, either adjust its supply chains or transship through third-party countries, or do whatever they have to do to try to modify this. The shippers are going to continue to do what they're doing. The truckers are going to continue to do what they're doing. I would submit to you that if you want toys for children for Christmas, I would buy them and stockpile them now, because I don't think there are going to be enough.
We've reached the pinnacle moment right here. Wow.
You could have a whole generation of little girls who never vote Republican if they don't get their dolls at Christmas. Just a thought, I don't know.
Protest ensues here. Wow.
Yeah. But so I think that it takes so long to adjust a supply chain. Look at what happened in COVID when we lost the Chinese supply chain because the Chinese economy shut down. It took almost 2 years. And that was just adjusting supply chains, nearshoring, modifying. It's not the drama of the tariffs, and it's not accompanied by the tax increase that the tariffs represent. And keep in mind, right now, the tariffs they're anti-inflationary at one level, but inflationary in another level. They're anti-inflationary because they're causing the economy to contract. They're inflationary because they're going to start driving prices up eventually. And when you have that inflationary pressure coupled with the pressure on the labor market, because you have, as we've talked about before, 1 in 4 construction workers is an undocumented alien. So you've got all of these undocumented workers who are being pushed out of the country, and there's nobody to replace them. So you have a labor shortage that's going to drive up prices. You have the tariff taxes that could drive up prices. You have an economy that may be contracting because small business is so hammered by the tariff uncertainty, and their businesses are so impacted. We could go back to that dreaded day that you and I remember called stagflation, where the economy is stagnant, but inflation is running. it's not at all clear. It's just not at all clear.
Based on your
And
knowledge, this was a temporary agreement to lower the tariffs to China, with the tariffs being dramatically lowered.
right,
The numbers that we're at now, are they what they were, or just
they're
slightly
close.
higher, or what?
They're close. They vary.
Okay.
I think they may be slightly higher both ways, but not enough to be the problem. The problem is that it's such a short period of suspension. And then you have all of these other countries impacted, and the Trump administration trying to cut one-on-one trade deals. That's an enormous task. And you have countries like India beginning to retaliate with other kinds of approaches. And then to make this all the more confusing, there are now about a half a dozen lawsuits pending, most of them now in the Court of International Trade here in New York City, which incidentally is a court with national jurisdiction, which is looking to consider whether or not the president has the authority under the IEEPA to even institute the tariffs. And we've talked about this before. Tariffs, taxes are not a power that the president was granted under the IEEPA. The administration has an argument that I've seen now that somehow it's an implied power. I'm not sure that it is, and I'm not sure that the courts are going to recognize an implied power to unilaterally tax because of the constitutional considerations on taxes. So we're in very complicated and muddied waters.
Do you feel, now I believe it's a 90-day pause here on the tariffs to China. Do you believe that we're going to be back to where we were, around April 2nd, somewhere around that date, when those 90 days are up? And do you believe that this sent a message to China, whatever the message is?
I think that the complicated. I wouldn't care to predict. I will predict this much. I think within that 90 days, there will be more clarity on the president's power to unilaterally institute the tariffs through the IEEPA. I think the courts are starting to move. It's not fast. This is the Court of International Trade is a very deliberative court. It's a very good court. It's a very highly respected court. It works hard. The members of the court work very hard, and they've got a lot of cases in front of them now, and I suspect that they are now digging in. But I think within the 90 days, you will begin to see some movement on some of those cases, particularly the first filed, which is the anti-China tariff case. It's the liquor distributor who filed it.
So while we're talking about China, what about Canada? Canada got in the whole mix of things. Still no solution as far as I can see in terms of tariffs there with Canada.
No, and the Canadians are becoming increasingly hostile. Their new government is not interested in, Trump's notion that Canada should be the 51st state, and they're not interested in, leaving the British Commonwealth or somehow changing their international status. And I don't think Trump is going to be able to pressure them. Canada has tremendous power in this, starting with power. There are parts of the upper Midwest that could have their power distribution situation made vastly more expensive if the Canadians go back to putting tariffs on. And then the cross-border trade in liquor and other goods, it's going to just create more chaos. And that's just in kind of consumer affairs. What about construction? Where the 90-day pause in China isn't really going to solve the construction problem. Some of those construction materials come from Canada.
Yeah.
That hasn't been addressed. Some of those materials come from Mexico. That hasn't been addressed. Right now, there's a backlog developing in construction, A, because they can't get materials, B, because there's starting to be a labor shortage, and C, the fate of some projects is some are going to go forward, some are not. It's going to be complicated.
Hmm. And we're talking about steel, aluminum, lumber coming from Canada.
Plywood.
Yeah, yeah. What's your intuition tell you, Carol? Moving forward, let's go 120 days in the future. This is tariffs paused for about 90 days. 120, maybe even 6 months. What are you feeling right now? And again, there's a lot of variables here and things could change.
Yeah,
But
yeah. My best judgment is that the courts will bring some rationality to this process.
really, okay.
Yeah, I think within that time frame, you will see the Court of International Trade start to hold arguments. I mean, briefing is underway in a couple of those cases now. It's not going to take you. It's like the law firm cases. You're not going to have every one of the cases briefed and decided. You need one or two, and you're going to know which way this thing is going. One thing that's interesting about this is it won't create a conflict in the circuits. It may slow the Trump administration's goal down to get this to the Supreme Court. I don't know how that will play out. There are cases pending in the DC Circuit. There are these cases in an International Court of Trade. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I think the courts may bring some clarity to this. If they find that the president does not have the authority to institute the tariff program, then the tariffs will have to end because he doesn't have the authority. I don't think they can get them through Congress.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Let's pause on the pause of the tariffs and dig into birthright citizenship situation going on here. Explain what that is for anybody that's not 100% sure and or up to speed.
Okay, one of the clauses of the 14th Amendment, which was part of the Reconstruction amendments to the Constitution following the Civil War, was the simple statement that if you're born within the borders of the United States, you are automatically a citizen of the United States. That was intended initially to block any effort to suggest that the freed slaves, possibly who had not been born on their plantations, weren't American citizens. It was to flatly end all argument. You were born here, you're a citizen here. Mm-hmm. It wasn't limited to freed slaves in the legislative history. It was everyone. It has been looked at by the Supreme Court really once in the 1920s, and they found it was absolute. You're born here, you're a citizen, end of discussion. I have privately thought that a very narrowly crafted legislation to deny birthright citizenship to those whose parents came fraudulently with the sole purpose of creating citizenship, maybe that would not be found to be a violation of the 14th Amendment, but you're talking about a very narrow, very small class. So that's the case. The case is that the president said by executive order, it's over as of a certain date. There's no more birthright citizenship. Women who were pregnant have sued. There's dozens of these cases all over the country. That's actually not what's before the Supreme Court right now. It is in a sense because it's the foundational case, but the actual issue the Supreme Court is going to be asked to decide is about national injunctions. Many of the judges that have heard these cases in district courts in, for example, the Western District of Washington, have issued national injunctions and said, you administration cannot enforce this birthright citizenship ban anywhere in the country. And so the White House is objecting to that. it is not common. I mean, courts do issue national injunctions. Let's understand it does happen. It is not the normal practice of the courts to extend an injunction around the country. It's done in fairly narrow cases, and it's done with some standards, usually standards where that involve certain kinds of very clear constitutional issues, and it's usually done in a narrow and tailored way. The Ninth Circuit and the Fifth Circuit have looked at this issue recently and have carved back in some instances national injunctions saying you've gone too far. I don't think they would do that in the case of the Western District of Washington. I think he probably is within the parameters that were drawn by the Ninth Circuit. So there is this debate going on. It is coupled with a related but different debate having to do with national prohibitions. If you make a rule and you go through the APA and it's challenged anywhere in the country, the APA being the Administrative Procedure Act, it's challenged anywhere in the country. By statute, the regulatory law has to be the same everywhere in the country. So if a court finds that a regulation is prohibited, that becomes a national prohibition. What happens is you may get another court that says it's not prohibited, sets up a conflict in the circuits that gets resolved, by the Supreme Court. So a simple example of that is when President Biden had his vaccine mandates to enter federal property. You had some district courts that tried to issue national injunctions, and actually what ended up happening is they were limited to their circuits. And so you wound up in a situation where certain circuits, like the Second Circuit, were enforcing this rule, but another circuit wasn't. Eventually, the Biden administration sort of abandoned the whole issue, in my opinion, because they had accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, which was to increase the vaccine rate around the country and slow down the COVID. So they weren't really, it was important to them in the short term to try to get people vaccinated. It wasn't important in the long term to have this whole battle with the country. So you can get these sort of spotty situations where regulations are nationally barred or nationally prohibited. Okay, that's fine. That's not the case before the Supreme Court, but it's a related issue that people are upset about, because some people feel that a court in New York shouldn't be telling people in Texas what to do, and people in New York don't think a court in Texas should be telling New Yorkers what to do. By and large, we need one law for the whole country, and we have a corrective system. It's called the circuits and the Supreme Court. So there's a way to resolve this. The Trump administration's notion that these birthright citizenship injunctions should all be limited to the district in which they're located is a little silly. This particular issue, they'll just file 86 cases, however many they have. They'll just add one till they have one in every district. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Haven't there been like 39 rulings so far with these injunctions? Yeah,
there have been. And it's part of why in this context, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think it's the only way that the administration can slow this down. There's such unanimity in the courts on birthright citizenship that the president has exceeded his authority, that I don't see any other way for the administration to slow it down. And that may be what they're trying to do, just slow down the negative rulings. It's hard to tell what the Supreme Court will do. This is a tough issue because there are policy reasons to encourage district courts to just stick to their knitting and stay in their districts. There are sometimes policy reasons why they shouldn't, and then there are statutory reasons why they won't.
And isn't this really uncharted territory with these broad injunctions against presidential policies? Like, when was the last time, with the magnitude that we're talking, has that ever happened? Has it?
Sure. Don't forget Truman and the steel mills. When he seized the steel mills to stop the strikes during the Korean War, that was a big one. He lost. He had to give the mills back. So that's a big one. Biden and the vaccine mandates to enter on federal property, not as big a deal, but a deal. The difference here, I think, is the number of them. I mean, Truman didn't issue dozens and dozens of executive orders. He basically just issued what he needed to issue to seize the mills to keep the steel being produced for the war effort in Korea. Biden didn't issue order after order after order on vaccines. He put out the one he put out, and when he lost it, and that was it. He just walked away. It was fine. Here, there are now 239 lawsuits, according to justsecurity.org, involving Trump executive orders, and they have very carefully said all birthright citizenship cases are counted as one, and all of these kind of Venezuelan deportation cases are counted as one. So they have some cases, some block cases counted as one. So, but it's the magnitude of the litigation that we have right now. I mean, I don't think any president has ever had this many lawsuits against executive orders before.
With about 30 seconds left, what do you think is going to happen here?
Slowly, the courts will bring order to the system, and slowly the economy will adjust to whatever the final rules are on the tariffs. I
love the way you put that. The economy will adjust.
Yes. And so will all of us.
Yes. But just the way to describe that, there will be an adjustment. Is it going to be up? Is it going to be down? That's either way, it's an adjustment.
Well, I think the worst possible outcome for the American people would be stagflation. And I hope the administration is watching that issue, because I'm sure that's what Powell is watching. I'm sure that's what the economists are all watching. That I think that would be a terrible outcome for the country.
Do you think that the president was just trying to flex his muscle against China and, send a message and then we put it in the pause, or this could be happening and that's the intention here?
I don't know. The problem I have is with trying to understand President Trump's intentions in the trade area is that he starts with a premise that it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, which is that we have a trade deficit. We only have a trade deficit in goods. We don't have a trade deficit in services. So our actual trade situation is trade surplus, massive trade surplus. The little deficit in goods doesn't warrant disrupting the economy. I think that's where I look at it. I don't see the deficit in plywood or the deficit in aluminum as justifying a massive disruption in the economy.
Well, that's a great you distinguishing the difference between goods and services, because many that are just skimming the headlines don't see that. They just hear the word tariffs and then leave it be. Carol, thank you for all the insight today. If anybody wants to reach out to you, maybe they have some comments, instantfeedback@gmail.com. You can reach us anytime based on this, but you directly, do you have a way that somebody can find you?
My email, carol.sigmond, SIGMOND @gmlaw.com. And I do answer my emails.
Respectfully, I have to go. I'm ordering some toys, getting it done now.
Order toys, yes.
Yes, getting it all done. Thank you so much for today and all your insight, and we'll see what happens. That's the way it goes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll be right back.
Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.